was the most exciting pitcher of the 1980s? That's a hard question to answer. There was the old guard, aces like Nolan Ryan and Steve Carlton, who had dominated the league for years. There were also youngsters like Fernando Valenzuela, Gooden, and Roger Clemens, who blew away hitters with electric stuff. Then there were players like Dave Stieb, Jack Morris, and Bert Blyleven, who were less flashy, but nevertheless some of the most valuable arms of the era. For my money though, the most exciting pitcher of the 80s is this man. This is Mario Soto. Soto was a fireballer, he was a strikeout artist, and the owner of the best changeup this side of Pedro Martinez. Those are just the highlights though. Dig deeper, and you'll find that Mario Soto's story is one of triumph, controversy, and heartbreak. Let's get into it. On July 12, 1977, Woody Fryman of the Cincinnati Reds made an announcement. Effective immediately, he was retiring from baseball to run a tobacco farm in Kentucky. For those who knew him, Fryman's decision wasn't surprising. He'd been unhappy in Cincinnati and requested to be traded earlier that season. So when that didn't happen, he took matters into his own hands. Fryman's retirement was a problem for the Reds. In the midst of their worst losing streak of the season, and in dire need of a starter, Cincinnati decided to call up one of their top prospects, a 21-year-old named Mario Soto. Soto was from the Dominican Republic, raised in the city of Bani. He grew up poor, and at just 14 years old quit school to work full-time in construction. But when he wasn't working, Soto, like many other kids in his country, played baseball. He was a catcher, although he idolized pitcher Juan Marichal, the most famous Dominican-born player in the sport. As a teen, Soto was tall, skinny, and strong, but he couldn't hit. So, at the age of 17, he became a pitcher. Despite his talent though, MLB scouts weren't interested in such an inexperienced arm. That is, except for Johnny Sierra, a bird dog scout for the Cincinnati Reds. Sierra told the club about Soto, and they signed him for $1,000. Frankly, I wasn't impressed, said scout George Zurall. I'd be lying to you if I said I thought he would be great. Soto's transition to pro ball was anything but smooth. He spoke no English, had no friends or family in the country, and had only been pitching for 2 months prior to signing. He persisted though, and by 1976 was leading the Florida State League in ERA, strikeouts, and innings. That fall, he was added to the Reds' big league roster, which is how, in July of 1977, Mario Soto found himself on the mound in Pittsburgh's Three Rivers Stadium, making his MLB debut. He threw 2 innings in relief, letting up 2 runs and striking out 1. He made his first start 6 days later, a complete game against the Cubs. A week after that, he tossed a shutout versus the Pirates. Following the game, manager Sparky Anderson told the press, "Unless I'm totally crazy, the kid will be outstanding." Anderson's prediction would prove true, just not right away. Soto's performance started to dip towards the end of his rookie year. He was sent down to AAA for most of 1978 and spent the next season and a half in the bullpen. By the 4th of July, 1980, he was sporting a mediocre ERA of 4.92. On July 5th, a pitcher named Bruce Berenyi made his debut for the Reds. Berenyi had been a first-round pick 4 years earlier, so expectations were pretty high. Unfortunately, he blew it, and that's putting it gently. He lasted just a third of an inning, allowing 6 runs to the Astros before being pulled. Skipper John McNamara brought in Mario Soto to clean up the mess. Soto did his job, and then some. He threw 8 2/3 innings of scoreless baseball, allowing just 3 hits, including one stretch where he retired 16 consecutive batters. The Reds came back to win 8-6, and Soto was made a starter again. On September 9th, he tossed a 15 strikeout game against the Braves, one off of the Cincinnati franchise record. Catcher and future Hall of Famer Johnny Bench said that when Soto was in a groove, his fastball looked like it was 120 miles an hour. By the start of the 81 season, Mario Soto was being hailed as the best Dominican pitcher since Juan Marichal. Through the first 2 months, he was top 5 in the National League in strikeouts, innings pitched, and complete games. Then, on June 12, 1981, the players went on strike. By the time games resumed 2 months later, over a third of the season had been lost. The Reds somehow missed the playoffs, despite their MLB best 66 wins. See, the owners had decided to split the season into 2, with the division winners from either half playing each other in a best-of-5 series. And although the Reds had more wins than any other team, they finished in second in each individual half. As a result of this format, the winningest team of 1981 was shut out of the postseason altogether. Mario Soto, for his part, emerged as one of the top pitchers in baseball. This was, in large part, thanks to his changeup. Soto's changeup was key to his success. Yes, his mid-90s fastball certainly didn't hurt, but it was his circle change that made hitters look foolish. It sat 10 to 15 miles an hour slower than his four-seam, and he could control it with missile-like precision. It would also go on to inspire another well-known Dominican pitcher. A young Pedro Martinez used Soto as an example when developing his own changeup, a pitch that would help carry him to the Hall of Fame. Mario Soto was exactly where he wanted to be. It had been a rocky few years, but he was finally on his way to the mountaintop. 1982 was a year of extremes for Mario Soto. There were plenty of highlights. He was named the opening day starter, tossed 13 complete games, and struck out 274 batters. This set a career high, the Reds' record, and broke Luis Tiant's single-season mark for punch-outs by a Latino player. Despite his excellence, however, Soto had his share of difficulties as well. In early May, he started a bench-clearing brawl after Cardinals pitcher Mark Little threw out his chin. He did it again later that month, when he was drilled in the hip by the Phillies' Ron Reed. Soto tried to charge Reed, with the bat still in his hand, but was held back by his teammates and ejected from the game. Soto remained dominant in '83, finishing second in the Cy Young vote to Phillies starter John Denny. He signed a 5-year, $6 million contract with the Reds, making him the highest-paid player in Cincinnati history. He came out the gate hot in '84. On May 12th, Soto made it through 8 no-hit innings against the Cardinals. He retired the first 2 batters in the 9th, bringing up right fielder George Hendrick. Hendrick was a former number 1 draft pick, and one of the most consistently good hitters in the game. He also had such little interest in baseball, that when the Cardinals won the '82 World Series, he jogged off the field, still in full uniform, and hopped in a car he'd arranged to have waiting for him. According to legend, Hendrick watched Soto's first 3 pitches with indifference. On the 1-2 pitch, however, Soto threw a fastball under Hendrick's chin, sending Hendrick to the dirt. Hendrick then proceeded to stand up, stare out at Soto without a word, and crush the next pitch for a home run. He circled the bases, sat back down on the bench, and muttered, "I was going to let the man have his no-hitter." That night, Hendrick celebrated his homer by going fishing. Now, George Hendrick may not have loved being at the ballpark, but that's probably because he didn't have today's sponsor, Gametime. The Gametime app is a ticket marketplace that makes it faster and easier to get last-minute tickets to your favorite events. That means sports. That means concerts. That means plays, if you're into that. All at a moment's notice. Fall is coming up, which means it's about to be my favorite time of the year for sports. Football is back. The MLB playoffs are starting, and the NHL season is about to begin. I think. I don't really watch hockey. Using Gametime, I've been able to find some amazing seats for much cheaper than on other sites. I also love their all-in pricing, which gets rid of those annoying surprise fees at checkout. And if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, you'll be credited for 110% of the difference. My favorite feature, though, is Gametime Picks, which lets me filter out all but the very best deals. There are amazing deals, which are tickets in the top 5% of value. And then there are super deals, which are in the top 1%. So if you've ever wanted to be part of the 1%, now's your chance. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code HISTORIAN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code HISTORIAN for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Chaos and beyond. Those were the words outfielder Dave Parker used to describe Soto's start versus the Cubs on May 27, 1984. In the second inning, Cubs hitter Ron Cey sent a long fly ball into the Wrigley stands. It curved foul at the last second, but rookie field ump Steve Ripley ruled it a home run. Soto went ballistic on Ripley and was immediately ejected. After the call was overturned, though, it was the Cubs' turn to lose it. The fans were in a frenzy. Garbage rained down from the stands. Chicago coach Don Zimmer charged the field and collided with Mario Soto, in a scene which would be repeated with Pedro Martinez 2 decades later. As Soto was finally led to the dugout, the Chicago crowd threw ice at him. Newly enraged, the pitcher grabbed a bat and tried to climb into the stands. His teammates pulled him down, and the commotion finally ended after a 33-minute delay. He was suspended 5 games. Just 2 weeks later, Soto made a start in Atlanta that would be described as out-and-out insanity. After allowing a homer to Braves hitter Claudell Washington, Soto threw at Washington in his next at-bat. In retaliation, Washington let the bat slip, quote-unquote, out of his hands and towards the pitcher. As he walked to the mound, the umpire moved to restrain him. Washington threw the ump to the ground, while Soto threw a punch to Washington's face, then threw the ball into the pile of players.
Both teams are out on the field fighting.
Following the game, Soto was asked why he threw the ball. He shot back, "If you sit in your house and somebody attacks you, what do? The guy attacked me." He was once again suspended 5 games. Washington got 3. Despite being selected for a 3rd straight All-Star team, the media seemed to shy away from Soto. Still, he remained one of the best, if not the best, pitchers in baseball. Cardinals manager Whitey Herzog said, "If I had to build a pitching staff from scratch, I'd start with Soto." Dave Parker said that there was no one better. Even Claudell Washington complimented him. Mario Soto is a great pitcher. He has the best stuff in baseball. For all the turbulence, Mario Soto was unquestionably great. In late 1984, though, something happened that would change everything. In the year 2009, Bleacher Report published this article, titled, "How Pete Rose Killed Mario Soto's Career." I should note that at the time, Bleacher Report was a content farm, relying on unpaid writers to churn out mostly low-quality blogs. SB Nation's Luke Thomas called it, quote, "the Walmart of journalism." Now, with that being said, I want to take a look at this claim, because just like Walmart, the contents of this article are simply too strange to ignore. In short, the argument here is that Rose, as manager of the Cincinnati Reds, bet on his team to win games that Mario Soto pitched. In doing so, he overused his best starter, cutting Soto's career short in its prime. I will admit that I have no love for Pete Rose, given, well, just about everything about him. But that doesn't mean we can take this article at face value. Let's look at the facts. In August of '84, Rose was traded back to the Reds for infielder Tom Lawless, at which point he was immediately named player-manager. It was also in '84 that Rose first gambled on baseball with bookie Ron Peters. Peters would go on to claim that Rose bet on Reds games as manager, usually for $2,000, and always on his team to win. That last part is important. See, a common defense of Rose is that he would have tried to win every game anyway. I mean, he was the manager after all. So what difference did it make if he bet on his team to win? However, there are a few problems with this logic. 1. Any gambling within the game poses a risk to the integrity, and thus the survival, of baseball. 2. Pete Rose was dog shit at gambling, racking up tens of thousands of dollars in debt to bookies. If they wanted to, these bookies could have easily blackmailed Rose into throwing games in order to keep them from revealing the truth. And then there's the third problem, which is also the one most relevant to this video. Imagine, if you will, a hypothetical player. We'll call him Shmario Shmoto. Let's say Shmario is the best pitcher on Rose's team, and therefore gives Rose the best chance of winning if he pitches. Now let's say Rose has placed a bet that his team will win on Tuesday. The problem, however, is that Shmario is scheduled to pitch on Wednesday. So, instead of throwing Shmario on the normal rest that he's used to, Rose has him pitch Tuesday on short rest. Repeat this multiple times a season with a player who's already prone to injury, and you have a problem. Which brings us to 1985, Pete Rose's first full year as manager, and the last full season of Mario Soto's career. Soto started out strong, winning 8 of his first 11 decisions and posting a 2.48 ERA. Behind-the-scenes reporting, though, told a different story. Soto was withdrawn, isolating himself from the media and his teammates. He lost several key starts to injuries in his shoulder and foot, and the press blamed him for the Reds' failure to make the postseason. Soto's legacy, said one writer, will be that he and no one else lost the Western Division title for the Reds, that he lost heart, lost too many games. Upon closer look, however, this criticism was pretty unfair. Soto had an above-average ERA of 3.58 in '85, struck out 214 batters, and pitched a total of 256 innings. To put that last number in perspective, Mario Soto's innings pitched that year were the 7th most in the National League. His 36 starts, meanwhile, were the 6th highest. In the modern day, you'd have to go back to 2003 to find a pitcher who hit either of those totals. Now, Soto's workload in '85 is key to the Pete Rose argument. See, in the 4 years leading up to that season, Soto started 138 games. Out of those 138 starts, 18 were on 3 days rest, rather than his normal 4. In 1985, though, out of 36 starts, 19 of them came on short rest. This massive spike seemed to have severe consequences for Mario Soto. He told Rose that his fastball and changeup weren't the same, and asked why he couldn't pitch on 4 days rest like before. By May, he was suffering from arm pain that caused him to miss games. The pain continued into 1986, when he was forced to undergo season-ending shoulder surgery. Over the next 2 seasons, his performance dropped, his velocity fell, and he was limited to just 20 combined starts. Then, on June 20th, 1988, the Reds released Mario Soto outright. 3 years before, he had been one of the most feared pitchers in the league. Now, at just 31 years old, he was finished. As far as Pete Rose is concerned, the evidence against him is mixed. Yes, he almost certainly overpitched Mario Soto in 1985, and yes, he was betting on baseball at the time. But as for any, let's call them, ulterior motives, there may be plenty of smoke, but I'm not sure there's fire. A major reason Soto made so many starts on short rest was due to the Reds' 4-man rotation, which they used for much of the season. As a result, all 4 of Cincinnati's primary starters made the majority of their appearances on 3 days rest. But for Soto, who threw harder than the average pitcher, and who had never pitched in such an arrangement, this represented a significant increase in workload. On the topic of workload, it's important to consider how much Mario Soto pitched even prior to the '85 season. Remember, he had only become a pitcher when he was 17, and just a few months later was doing it at the professional level. And while he was excellent, it's possible, maybe even likely, that he was rushed into a big league workload too quickly. In his first minor league spring training in 1974, Soto broke his elbow while throwing, causing him to miss the entire season. His arm pain continued in 1975, and he made only 5 appearances that year. What this means is that Mario Soto didn't become a full-time pitcher until 1976, and yet, by the end of his rookie season in 1977, he had thrown 183 innings between AAA and the majors. Now, this was the 70s, of course, a time before such modern inventions as load management and giving a crap about the general well-being of athletes. But here was a young man who had barely pitched before, who was coming off a severe arm injury, and had a tendency to throw every pitch at full tilt. In hindsight, Soto's rapid rise through the Reds system was a recipe for disaster. The final point I want to make comes from none other than Rose's bookie, Ron Peters. In a 1989 interview, Peters told Sports Illustrated that Pete Rose supposedly didn't bet on games in which Mario Soto pitched. This claim is supported by John Dowd, the man who led the official investigation into Rose. Dowd said that Rose did not bet on the Reds when Mario Soto pitched. In March of 2007, Rose made the claim that he bet on the Reds every day and that he only ever bet on them to win. In typical Pete Rose fashion, this confession was rambling, long-winded, and self-serving. Mario Soto's response, on the other hand, was a short one. Soto ended his MLB career with 100 wins and 92 losses over parts of 12 seasons, all with the Cincinnati Reds. From 1980 to 1985, he was one of the most dominant pitchers in the game. During that span, he led all of Major League Baseball in strikeouts with 1,248. That was more than Hall of Famer Steve Carlton, and nearly 200 more than Nolan Ryan. At the time of his retirement, Soto had the second most strikeouts, complete games, and wins above replacement of any Dominican-born pitcher. The only person with more was his idol Juan Marichal. For all his accomplishments, however, Mario Soto's legacy is as much about what could have been. What if he hadn't gotten injured? What if he'd been able to pitch into his late 30s like Marichal, or his 40s like Carlton and Ryan? What if his arm was allowed to develop and rest properly, rather than overused and abused? Maybe things would have been different. Maybe they would have been better. Maybe nothing would have changed. In the end, though, we can only wonder. What if?